What up, what up, what up? How's everyone doing today? Let me know if my mic sounds good. Let me know if everything's looking good. Welcome to the channel. It's your boy. It is Sunday, 4 p.m. EST. My name is Darth Moda, and I am really looking forward to the show we're going to have today. Just want to wait just one more second, make sure everything is in order. I got my notes. I got my speech. I got my links. We got Destro, the mod, in the chat. We got all the beautiful people that are going to be watching this in the future. And just want to say thank you guys for being here. And thanks for coming to the channel. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Can't wait to get into it. Looking forward to it. It's been a little bit of a while since I've been streaming. You know, I started, a couple months ago. And I got a good amount of streams under my belt. And yeah, I'm happy to be back after my little break, and I can't wait to keep doing this and keep giving you guys more entertainment, more content, more knowledge, more deep dives, more tier lists, all that good stuff that you enjoy. All right. Here we go. All right. How's everyone doing today? Am I clear? Is everybody in? Is everybody in? Okay. Wow. I guess we'll just go right into it. Today, we're going to be going over this book, Venom in the Blood, by Erich von Hoffmann, released for the first time in 1990. And this is the first print. And as you can see, it's very old. Them yellow S pages. And yeah, I read this book a long time ago, and I've read it lots of times since. And man, I read it when I was very young, and I actually read it in a class that me and Destro both had, and a teacher that we both remember. Her name was Miss Brescia. It was in 7th grade. Man, probably the worst teacher I've ever had, but she did have some books, so she had a good book collection. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my experience in the class and my first experience with the book. The book is about the true life, real crime event, or multiple events, of Gerald and Charlene Gallego. Okay, so this was a couple in the 70s and the 80s who went on a reign of terror for 2 years in 3 states, Nevada, California, and Oregon, where they claimed a total of 10 victims, possibly 11, possibly more, that we just don't know about, that they're not willing to admit to. Yeah, the book is based off of this man, Erich von Hoffmann, the author, his investigation into the case. He wrote a foreword, and let me see if I can not destroy this book while I'm reading it. Here's the foreword. In 1972, a totally new kind of multiple murder suddenly appeared in America. The media, always anxious to create catchy new buzzwords, named them serial killers. According to the 1987 FBI Task Force Statistics on Multiple Homicides in the United States, there are at least 5,000 active serial killers operating in our country at any given time. The majority are sociopaths who prey upon any man, woman, or child who appears vulnerable or has something the sociopath wants or needs at that particular moment. Though their primary targets are women and sex, they must also make a living, so money and our property is of equal importance to them. All right, so he goes on. He says, I became aware of the Gallego case sometime in the late 1984 when I was a female relative of Gerald Gallego's mother, who had been an up-and-coming actress with the old MGM studios in the 1950s. At that time, my mother was a producer-writer at MGM, and the two women became friends while working on several films. After listening to her story, I was intrigued by the fact that it was a husband and wife serial killer team rather than the usual everyday variety of I done it because I hate my mother or God told me to do it case. And I decided to find out if the story might be intriguing enough to write. I then discovered it was almost impossible to find a starting point because most of our records were sealed. There was no real public information on Gerald or Charlene Gallego because of their several aliases. Furthermore, the entire Gallagher family was a closed entity. They had refused to talk to anyone about anything. Gerald's mother even claimed to be the housekeeper when questioned by police about her son and daughter-in-law. Gerald and Charlene never spoke a word to the press after their arrests or during their trials, and haven't to this day. He goes on to say, as a former police officer, I always imagine myself totally inured to the ferocious savagery one human being can and does inflict upon another. But in all my experience, I've never heard or read of a criminal case in history so brutal and bizarre and senseless as the 10 kidnap, rape, murders committed by Gerald and Charlene Gallagher. So to this guy, this is probably one of, to him, it's the most brutal, as you said before, and insane acts of crime ever committed by a couple. And I would have to agree. After reading this book, I mean, every single page has something debaucherous on it. It's a very densely written book. It's, how many pages is it? Over 300 pages. And you can probably get through it quick if you read quick like me and you're into stuff like this. At the time when I read this, I was very, very young. And for a young kid reading something like that and knowing that it was true, knowing that these people are still out there is very, very frightening. Okay. So I went on Wikipedia and I looked at the definitions for antisocial personality disorder and the difference between psychopathy and sociopathy. And there seems to be a little bit of a difference of opinion as to how they differ from each other. So it says psychopathy is commonly defined as a personality disorder characterized partly by antisocial behavior, a diminished capacity for empathy and remorse, and poor behavioral controls. Psychopathic traits are assessed using various measurement tools, including Canadian research Robert D. Hare's psychopathy checklist. Psychopathy is not the official title of any diagnosis in the DSM or ICD, nor is it an official title used by any other major psychiatric organizations. Okay. Now, that's the difference between psychopathy and sociopathy is that one tends to have the sociopath tends to have a disregard for society, wants to draw into themselves, and sometimes would appear to be very normal in a day-to-day conversation. Now, psychopathy is a little bit different. Psychopathy is more along the lines of where psychopathy. Let's see what Wikipedia has to say. It says psychopathy is a personality construct characterized by impaired empathy and remorse, and bold, disinhibited, egocentric traits marked by superficial charm and the outward appearance of apparent normalcy. What up, Mella? How you doing? Welcome to the show. I was just telling everyone this is the book we're going over, Venom in the Blood. And yeah, so in the book, the author characterizes Gerald Gallagher as a sociopath, but I don't think that's correct. I think he's completely psychopathic. And he probably perhaps he's a sociopath as well. But I think he matches this definition of psychopathy, as opposed to sociopathy. Am I saying that correctly? Sociopathy. I would disagree with the author in that sense. But the author did do a really good job of putting the information together in a cohesive narrative that at the end of the day is quite entertaining. Before I begin, I want to just say, in preparation for this stream, I went back through the book. I made notes with these big old stick-it posties. And I also watched a couple streams of content creators that they did on it. And I actually learned a lot that I didn't know before. And one of the things that I learned from the stream that I watched was that the woman in this case, her name's Charlene Gallagher, she is still alive, currently residing in the Sacramento area, though we're not sure where in that area, under an alias. And we're going to find that Charlene's defense to sort of get her an easier sentence went through, and what her sort of way of doing that was she pretty much claimed that she was a victim in the whole thing, even though she was also an accomplice. And so it kind of reminded me of this TED talk that I watched where one of the parents of the Columbine kids who did Columbine, she went on TED and she was pretty much saying that this could have happened to any parent, and her son was just a normal kid, and this was the other boy's fault. It was the other boy who influenced him, and he was actually innocent. This could have happened to anybody. And we're going to find that Charlene is going to sort of use that same tactic in her defense of herself. And to me, that is completely irresponsible. And I don't know how a jury of my peers could look at that and find sympathy in this woman who did all these terrible things with the man that she did them with, who was equally, if not more, terrible. Her husband, who she defended up until the last minute, until there was some drama that went on. We're going to get into that because it's quite interesting what happened. But both of them deserve to rot in hell. They are demons. They are freaking animals. And I don't feel safe with people like that in my community. All right. We're going to get into my little essay, and then I'll read a couple excerpts from the book so you guys can get a little bit of a better understanding of the case. All right. Cheers. My sugar-free red blue. Here we go. Venom in the Blood. This book is based off of the real-life case, as I said before, of Gerald Armand Gallego, born July 1946, died July 2002, and Charlene Gallego Williams, maiden name, born October 1956. She was released in 1990 after she was incarcerated. I'm going to get into that. She currently resides in Sacramento under an alias. They were active from the years from September 1978 to November 1980, with possible victims 11 or more and proven victims 10. All right. It is 2008 and I'm in English class. This teacher allows me to browse her library to read once my work was done. As I am skimming through the spines of the many titles on her shelf, one catches my eye. It is all black with the red, almost evil-like font that stands out from the rest of the books. I gently take it out of the shelf and look at the title and the cover artwork. It is A Venom in the Blood by Eric Van Hoffmann. So there's Gerald in court smoking a stove. And there is Charlene. And that picture of Charlene, she looks very good in that picture. But in other pictures that I've seen, she looks nothing like this. It's crazy how they dolled her up for the trial. I could not tell you the precise reason why I began to read the book or why I never brought the book back to my teacher's library. In fact, this wasn't the first book I had stolen from this teacher, nor was it the first book I had ever stolen in the first place. It might, however, be one of the most memorable books I have ever read. At the time, I was not aware of the likes of Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, Charles Manson, David Berkowitz. This case of the Gallego sex slave murders was my introduction into the dark world of serial killers, and specifically through this work by Van Hoffmann. It is definitely not Shakespeare, but the descriptions of the acts are akin to something in a Bret Easton Ellis novel. The author used testimony and facts from the case files to fuel these descriptions, while also taking a few liberties in between to create a portrait of these two despicable thieves of innocence and life. They preyed on young girls and teenagers. Charlene, 22 at the time when they began their killing spree, practically looked like a teenager with her small stature, so it was easy to convince unsuspecting victims to trust her, especially since she was also highly personable and unassuming. They would go to fairs and malls, places popular with the young crowd, in a van with a bed in the back. Gerald would wait in the van while Charlene went out to lure in the victims, and only those specifically chosen by Gerald. After being caught, Charlene would testify against Gerald after discovering a letter that he mailed out to a girlfriend who was on the outside. Up until that point, she had refused to testify. Once she made a deal with the state of California, she was able to describe in detail all of the murders, including the events leading up to and following them. So Van Hoffmann, the author, attributes this ability to a photographic memory possessed by Charlene. Whether that is true or not, it is amazing how precise her testimony was. as well as her memory of where the murders took place. She was even able to tell police how the bodies were buried and in what positions the bodies were. In fact, there was only one case where she was unable to identify the location correctly. Years later, the bodies were eventually found by the owner of the ranch where the Gallegos had buried the two victims, a couple. So they think that there was another victim that they actually did before the first case, but they haven't been able to prove, nor has Charlene admitted to this. But they have pretty much enough evidence to assume that it was them. But that's the 11th possible victim. But like I said, they can't prove it, so we don't know. Going through some of the latest updates on the case, I found that Charlene, who only served 16 years and 3 months for her part in the murders. Now, think about what I'm saying here, guys. She served 16 years and some change for taking part in the murder of 10 people. Proven. That's despicable. So anyway, because of her family's wealth, she had begun charity for veterans and the families of POWs and KIAs. This was after she got released. She has also claimed, as she did when she chose to testify against her husband, that she was just another victim of the real monster, Gerald Gallagher. Since my first confrontation with this case was through Van Hoffman's true crime novel, I am very hesitant to trust or believe anything that this woman says. So there's another book that came out a little while after this. I don't know the name of it, and I haven't read it. But what I do know is that that book took a lot more leniency in regards to Charlene, as opposed to Gerald, who they think of as the real monster. So I like this book because I think it's a little bit more fair to the idea that, you know, this was a couple murder. This wasn't like a guy who was forcing someone to do it. She was involved. She was directly involved in the murders and some of the other acts that happened, because they didn't just murder people. They would do stuff to them before. And it's terrible. Absolutely disgusting. So like I said, I think the court went way too easy on her. She should have served at least a life sentence for literally assisting and planning the kidnapping, rape, and execution of 10 innocent young people. For the book, Van Hoffman was allowed to listen to transcripts of conversations that Charlene, well, he probably didn't listen to them. He probably had to look through them because at the time there wasn't that much technology. So he probably looked at the transcripts, and he was also able to talk to Charlene's jail cellmates. And you'll find that Charlene's story went from she enjoyed and was directly involved with the killings while she was waiting to, get released. She was pretty much confessing to her cellmate all the fucked up things that they had done and how much she enjoyed it and how it was like orgasmic for her. And then as soon as something happened, she changed her mind and she began to say, oh no, I'm a victim. It was all Gerald. He made me do it. I tried to run away, all this bullshit. So anyway, I do believe that this book is the real true account of how these people actually were at the time. And Van Hoffman does a great job of bringing us into that world, specifically with the colloquial language throughout all of the dialogue, as well as the concise backstories we get of what some might say is the deadliest couple in American history. In the end, we will find that through Charlene's so-called photographic memory, as well as Gerald's hubris, the couple would cement their downfall as well as their reputation as just that, the deadliest couple in American history. And I think they are. That's what they are. They're like, after reading this and looking at some of the other case notes, I can't think of another couple more deserving of that title, unless, you want to talk about, Joe and Jill. I'm just kidding. That's terrible. That's a bad joke. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Hope you're having a good time. Let's keep going. Well, you know what? Let me actually read something from the novel real quick. Let me go to my first thing, just to give you a taste of what we got going on here. It says, Gerald's family was so contaminated by murderers, thieves, and assorted other criminals. One of his former wives said that Gerald's blood was more poison than a cobra's venom, and that the unmanageable teenage daughter she had by him inherited that same venom in her blood and would probably end up a multi-murderess like Winnie Ruth Judd. I believe was his grandmother. When he wanted to use it, Gerald Gallagher could project a Svengali-like charisma. He was friendly when he needed to be, and was said by some to be downright charming, with a born con man's ability to convince anyone to swallow whatever story was laying on them. Like an old-time circus animal trainer, he'd learned how to apply pain without serious injury. He usually administered with dispassion and with the intent of forcing the subject to do exactly his will. In exchange, they could avoid further pain and receive a little reward now and then. Surprisingly, only 2 of his women walked out because of the physical abuse, and one of them, who she said still missed him, took off only after Gerald tried to cut her throat during a hand-to-hand battle in the living room. Jeez! Some psychiatrists claim that women have a natural bent for masochism, which might account for all those women hanging in there with the legs of Gerald Gallagher. I don't believe that. They claim that women have a higher tolerance for pain and accept subjugation far more readily than men, which might explain something about Gallagher's women. I don't think that actually is true. I think he probably just had a good eye for picking out women that he knew he could, because he liked smaller women. He liked petite women. And part of it is because he liked, you know, how childlike they were, because he's a piece of shit. But he also probably liked that because he knew he could beat on them easier. Sociopaths like Gerald Gallagher are also masters of psychological manipulation. And again, if we believe psychiatrists who state unequivocally that the females of the species always subconsciously want to do the right thing in a love relationship and are always willing to take first blame, that too might account for the loyalty of Gerald's women. Simply put, Gerald had accidentally discovered the exact same process used by the Marine Corps to destroy a recruit's civilian's personality and then rebuild it to Marine specifications. The Corps truthfully states, once a Marine, always a Marine. Any man who has passed through that mental tearing down process will, at least subconsciously, belong to the Corps until the day he dies. So what the author is trying to say is that Gerald pretty much used the psychotic manipulation to convince Charlene that he was the only man that was going to be able to fulfill her needs as a partner. And he's making an allusion to how the tearing down of the subconscious is in that relationship is the same as what the Marines do, where they will break you down and then lift you back up and model you in the image that you want. And Gerald does that. When they first met, Gerald was charming. He was nice. He would buy her flowers. And then after they started going out for, I think a month, he would change into something different. He started telling her how to dress, what makeup to wear. He started being more manipulative. And the reason why he did that was because he knows how to work his people. You know, it's terrible. It says here, Gerald loved all animals, particularly dogs, and was once arrested for knocking an elderly woman through a picket fence with his famous elbow smash to the ribs when he saw her beating her Pekingese with a stick because it had crapped in the wrong place. Yeah, so he tries to give him a little bit of empathy with his, I guess Gerald had a propensity for dogs and other animals. He doesn't like seeing dogs get hurt, which is weird because he's so willing to do all this messed up stuff to people. You know, I don't know why he has a problem with people doing stuff to dogs. It does that never made sense to me. So I don't see that as a charismatic attribute. It doesn't make him an empathetic or a creature character. It's more pathetic to me. So let's get back into the essay. Gerald was from a low-class family, his mother a prostitute who abused and allowed the abuse of her son by her many clients and boyfriends. It is also probable that he was sexually abused by one of these boyfriends as a child. His father, also named Gerald Gallagher, whom he never met, was the first person to be executed in Mississippi using the gas chamber. Charlene, on the other hand, was a straight-A student, well-read, and highly intelligent. Her father was the vice president of a popular supermarket chain in the area. And when his wife died, Charlene was still in high school. He would take her with him on business dealings and lunches, effectively using her as a Ms. Lane Jackswell character, which she would, hey, Jason, what's up? Yeah, I'm just talking about how the girl in this story, Venom in the Blood, she's like a pre-G-Max, you know? Her father used to take her when she was still in high school on these business trips, and she would go on lunches, and she would flirt with the clients and get them to, you know, go into deals with her dad, and that would later transform into the relationship she's gonna have with Gerald, and their bait and switch tactics that they'll use on these young girls in Nevada, Oregon, and California. Charlene was called a nymphomaniac by many of her male peers, including one of her ex-husbands. Two of her separations before she met Gerald were supposedly taken because of her proclivities for skittle sex, as well as a desire for threesomes with other girls. So she was a freaky gal. So Gerald and Charlene met on a blind date set up by one of Charlene's friends, and they immediately hit it off. Charlene would describe all of her past relationships as being to men who weren't traditionally masculine. And when she met Gerald, she saw in him everything she wanted. Gerald, on the other hand, probably liked how young Charlene looked due to his proclivities, and perhaps also realized that she could be the perfect bait for acting on those proclivities with other people. Yeah, bro, she got that sickness, but it's not like, yeah, she needs to get into that black snake mode. That's where Charlene needs to go. She needs to get it beat out of her, for sure. So Gerald was okay with the threesomes, but only if he was involved and the only dude. But what he was not okay with was Charlene hooking up with other women without him present. On one occasion, they had hired a teenage go-go dancer for a night of debauchery. And now you're probably asking, like, what? That doesn't make any sense. How did they hire a teenage go-go dancer? Well, they lived close to Nevada, and then back in the day, you know, people were doing all crazy sorts of stuff, so it probably wasn't hard. So apparently, Gerald left the following morning for work or an errand. On his return home, he found Charlene and the dancer engaged in X, and he had it. It angered him to the point that what did he do? He threw the dancer out and through a glass window, and then he proceeded to beat his wife. So this was sort of the impetus towards the couple's venomous fate. Perhaps Gerald had already thought and or performed acts of depravity ending in murder before he met Charlene, or even during and without her knowledge. There were long gaps of time where Gerald would leave Charlene alone in the house and go off to do who knows what. Whether he was committing small arm robberies, dealing drugs, or perhaps claiming more victims in his sex-fueled rage, we may never know. But what we do know is that Gerald had a rap sheet that went all the way back to his the age of 10. When he robbed a neighbor's home. When he was 12, he assaulted a 6-year-old girl, and that crime resulted in him serving time at a youth detention center. And I'm going to say this just so you understand, this guy is a real complete piece of shit. And the reason why I say that is because, not just because of all the things that he did to those innocent victims, but also what he did to his own daughter. Yes, you heard me correctly. His own daughter. This guy is straight up. I don't even know, dude. Like, it's the most disgusting thing I've ever come across. And I'm sorry that you guys have to listen to me talk about it, but I've been wanting to make this video ever since before I started making YouTube. And I feel like it's honestly a process of grieving for me, for my sanity and my innocence, because this book took a part of that when I was in 7th grade. Okay. So you have to share that with me. So I'm sorry, but I love you guys. Thanks for being here. Please like the stream. If you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. Smash the bell so you know when I'm going to go live. Also, follow me on Instagram. You can find me Instagram at darth.moda. And yeah, I post previews all the time on there. Let you know when I'm going to be going live. Jason says he's hungover as hell from his sister's wedding yesterday. Well, l'chaim to your sister. Congratulations. What up, Cam? What up, Destro? Everyone's here. All right. So after Gerald had the event with the go-go dancer, you know, he finds his wife. So first they have the threesome. He goes to work the next day. He comes home and they're doing stuff with things. I'm sure you can understand what that means. And he comes home from work and he's upset. So he throws the go-go dancer out of the window and then he beats the crap out of his wife. So after that event, Gerald begins to claim that he's having problems getting it up. And because he says that seeing her in that state, it did something to him and his thing. So he claims that because he saw the two of them, it affected his body so that he was unable to perform well. Charlene invited Gerald's daughter and her friend over for a weekend, and Gerald did what he did to his daughter, and it seemed to fix the problem for a while. Disgusting. So Charlene, being the intelligent and psychotic she is, she decided that they would really should do is find some sex slaves that they could use and dispose of, right? That's a good idea. That's intelligent thinking. Like, maybe it's intelligent, but it's not right. It's totally fucked up. Like, this in the book, it talks about how she was the one who came up with the idea. She's the one who like put the thought in his head that they should do this. And that's just crazy that she got the commuted sentence of 16 years. Then he got sentenced to death. That's crazy. It pisses me off. That I can't even understand that. Makes my skin crawl. Okay. I'm going to talk about the first event, and I'm not going to talk about really any other events that they did because it's disgusting. If you want, you can check out the book. It might be in a library near you. It's not in print anymore. Venom in the Blood, Eric Van Hoffman. I bought this copy on Amazon, and it's coming apart, as you can see. It's a very old book. Okay, here we go. By the way, if you have kids, please shut this off. Watch it later when they're not here, or put them out of the room. Put some earmuffs on them because it's is not for kids. Okay, guys. So Gerald and Charlene claimed their first victims, two young girls aged 16 and 17, in September 1978 in Sacramento, California. After Charlene tricked the girls to join her at her van to smoke some pot, Gerald surprised the girls by pulling a gun on them. Gerald and Charlene abducted them, and then Gerald proceeded to abuse them sexually while Charlene drove the van. When he was done, they drove from Baxter to Slow House in California to kill them both and dispose of the bodies in a ditch. One of the victims died from bludgeoning by a tire iron, and the other from a gunshot wound from a .25 caliber pistol. I only mentioned this first crime because I want to give you an understanding of how evil these people were if you haven't yet gotten that. Charlene would later tell a cellmate that she felt a rush akin to an orgasm as they were committing the crime. This completely contradicts her claims of being a victim to Gerald later on when she would decide to testify against him in court. I think this might be one of the other things that upsets me the most, because we have her on the record literally explaining how she felt during and after the crimes, and never do we hear a bit of remorse until she finds the letter. Now, what's the letter? The letter, I think I might have mentioned this before, when they were both in jail after they got caught, they were writing letters to each other. And Gerald also had a girlfriend on the outside who would also write letters to. Somehow, some way, Charlene got a hold of the letter to the girlfriend. And after she got that letter, that's when she decided to testify against her husband. Because remember, you can't be forced to testify against your spouse in most states. And in the state of California, that is true. So they couldn't use anything that Charlene said because it would go against the law. But once Charlene wasn't forced to do that, once she was doing it of her own volition, that's a completely different story. So after she finds the letter, she begins to testify, and that's how we know so much about what we know is from her eyewitness testimony. So I think Charlene is not only intelligent, but she's also a very emotional person. And her desire to be Gerald's number one girl was so consuming that she would literally do anything that he said because she wanted him. The novel perhaps dramatized, perhaps not, because like I said, he did kind of fill in the lines with drama. Explains that whenever Gerald had erectile dysfunction, Charlene would be the one to recommend that they might want to go get some love slaves to alleviate his condition. So here's what would happen is they would do their acts. It would be okay for a little while. They were doing their thing. They weren't really killing anyone. And then Gerald would be unable to perform. And so Charlene would say, "Oh, I know what we needed to do. We needed to go do that thing that we did, and it will work again." And it's completely psychotic. Like, it's psychotic that you have that idea, and it's also psychotic of the legal system to be like, "Oh no, she was just a victim." It's crazy. If this is true, I stand by what I said earlier, that 16 years and 3 months is way too short of a time to serve for these crimes. She was involved from the beginning to the end of each one of these atrocities, and just like Gerald, had something to gain from them. Mainly her psychosexual satisfaction from coming from her victims and her husband, because she took part in the abuse as well. She wasn't just like driving the car in a lot of these places and a lot of these events. She was like doing stuff to them too. The fact remains that she is a member of one of the communities which she terrorized. She lives in Sacramento. That's where a lot of the crimes took place. Apparently she changed her identity. She got a new name, and she also got plastic surgery on her face. So we don't know who she is. She can be anyone. She's only 65 years old, but still, it's she's going to turn into that lady from Prisoners. That's what's going to happen. If we don't lock these people up, they're going to turn into these Prisoners people. Jeez. After nearly 3 years and a total of 10 confirmed victims across 3 different states, Gerald and Charlene Gallego were arrested outside of a Western Union in Omaha, Nebraska. Well, Gerald was arrested outside the building. They actually got Charlene inside as she was trying to get some money that her parents had sent to her. And while the evidence against the couple was substantial, there had been no one who had witnessed any of the actual crimes take place. So they had enough evidence to bring them in. But to get the conviction, what they really needed was Charlene's eyewitness testimony, because they didn't have any eyewitness. And back then, just having things like fingerprints wasn't enough. It might not be enough to convince a jury of your peers or their peers to actually, get the sentence that you want. So you have to remember, this was before CSI. This was before DNA. They had to do so much legwork. These officers, these lawmen, they did us such a service by doing this. This is why when people are like, defund the police, we need to get rid of the police, you're freaking crazy. That's not what we need to do. We need to put more limitations on police for sure. Make sure they're not killing our citizens. But getting rid of police? Are you crazy? That's ridiculous. That's just going to lead to more anarchy. But I guess that's what some people want, right? They want shit to go crazy. They want people like Gerald and Charlene, instead of getting locked up like they should, they want these people to be able to go to a counselor and, go on medication and get sympathy. Fuck that shit. Anyway, I get riled up. So no one witnessed the crimes except for Charlene. So they needed her testimony. They both pleaded not guilty to all the charges. And because they were married, like I said, Charlene could not be forced to testify. However, once Charlene found that letter intended for Gerald's girlfriend, her lawyers were able to use her testimony. So what I think happened was like, obviously the guards knew that Gerald was writing to different women. And so what they probably did was they probably just switched the letters, because they knew that if Charlene found that, she would turn on him. And what do you know? That's exactly what happened. So Charlene testifies, and then they go to court. Gerald actually represented himself in the trial after firing a court-appointed attorney, and he kept Charlene on the stand for a total of 6 days in court. He was unable to pass a motion to invalidate his wife's testimony because not only had it been cleared by the local state authorities, but Charlene was testifying under her own volition. Although I have my qualms with the deal she received, I am so grateful that she ended up testifying, because if she hadn't, who knows how many more victims the two might have took. Amongst Gerald's many mistakes in representing himself in court was his decision to take the stand to be cross-examined. He was also able to be identified using fingerprint analysis, because years back he had fired some slugs into a ceiling of a bar he had been working at. He had to repair the damage, but he never took the slugs out. Authorities were able to match the caliber of the bullet and the fingerprints of the slugs to one of the many found at the crime scene. It seems that for all of Gerald's cunning as a con man and hardened con man and criminal, and Charlene's supreme intelligence, they were unable to cover their tracks. What we must remember is this investigation took place before modern technology, so all the documents, interviews, and evidence were put together and sorted by hand. So like I said before, thank a police officer, thank these detectives. They did us all a service to this nation. Gerald was finally found guilty of his many crimes, and Charlene as well, due to her being an accomplice. But as I said before, Charlene got a commuted sentence due to her willingness to testify. Gerald was sentenced to death by gas chamber just like his father, but he ended up being extradited to Nevada where he stayed. His death sentence was eventually overturned because they started getting rid of the death sentence everywhere. And he died of rectal cancer that spread to his lungs and other organs in 2002. And that's a good thing. That's a happy ending to this story, is because that motherfucker got cancer of his ass. So there you go. We got some retribution at the end of that. The thing I'm pissed off about, as I've been saying this entire time, is Charlene has now gone on to claim she was just a victim. And she said this quote: there were some victims died and some victims got out alive. I was one of the ones who got out alive. So take that for what you will. Okay, I'm just going to read a couple excerpts out of the book, and then we're going to end the stream. It's going to be a quick one today. I know a lot of you are probably going to be going on to JD's stream, as I probably will as well. Love me some JD. I love listening to him battle the Black Hebrew Israelites in particular. That's my favorite thing to watch. Yeah. Go check out JD. Also, big shouts out to Baselit Analyzer. In preparation for the stream, I actually went back and rewatched his Ted Bundy tapes video. That was a really good one. You should check that out. And yeah, I'm hoping me and him can get together and do a stream real soon. We did talk about doing the Boys from Brazil. If any of you guys have seen The Boys from Brazil, we were thinking about doing that one. And we might also combine that with Marathon Man, so they kind of share a lot of similarities there. So yeah, wait for that. I'm gonna get in contact with Baselit, and we're gonna get that set up for you guys, because that's gonna be a good one. Okay, here's a couple excerpts from the book. Where is it? Okay, yeah. I like this one because this kind of goes into something we probably all know. It says page 145. Charlene sat on the floor in the living room, drinking straight gin, popping Quaaludes, and staring glassy-eyed at Gerald, who was huddled on the couch watching Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner cartoons. I thought that was funny because, of course, they're gonna have the. There's no way the author knew, that he was watching Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner cartoons, but it's interesting that he put that in there. It reminds me of 12 Monkeys. Brad Pitt, 12 Monkeys. There's always, like BLA is always saying, there's always a freaking, in every insane asylum or every crazy movie, there's literally always cartoons being played, and it doesn't make sense. Like, why are you going to be letting these crazy people watch animals bonk each other over the head and drop from cliffs? Like, that's not conducive to healing, right? Or am I just crazy? Am I hopped up off this Red Bull? Are you hopped up off this Red Bull? Because I love me some Red Bull. Cheers. All right. So yeah, that was interesting that he put that in there. Let's see what else I put in here. So remember how I was telling you that Gerald would go away for long periods of time, and we don't know what he did. We don't know what he's doing during this long period of time. So it says here, early one morning, Gerald drove away in Charlene's Olds without saying a word and disappeared for 48 hours. Who knows what the man was doing? How many victims he could have claimed in 48 freaking hours? This is what I'm saying. We don't know the extent to the crime. We don't know the extent to the debauchery and extent. We don't know the extent to the venom in the blood. And remember, the first thing I wrote about was how, one of Gerald's past wives would say things like, there's a venom in his blood. That's where the author got the title from. It's from a direct quote from one of Gerald's ex-wives. And it's just crazy. Let's see. I wrote hubris down here. This is interesting. So after they do the thing to somebody, all finished, Daddy? Charlene asked. He says, "Yep, no trouble at all." Charlene asks, "Why was she yelling?" And Gerald says, "Oh, just that I'd lied about letting her go home." And then Charlene says, "That's a dumb Mexican for you." So yeah, they're they're messed up. And then Gerald says, "You know something, baby? We could kill 50 girls every day, and there's no way they'd ever catch us." How confident do you have to be to say something like that? Charlene says, "You think so, Daddy?" He says, "I know it. As long as we stick to freeway runners, dopers, and lowlifes, no one in the whole world gives a damn. Like you say, everybody will be glad they've disappeared and won't cause any more trouble." So it's he knows what he has to do, and he's probably right about that. But they fucked up because instead of killing these lowlives, they chose to kill their last victims. Actually, were a 21-year-old and 22-year-old, like American portrait of a couple who were going on to do great things, and that was their big mistake. They picked the wrong victims, and yeah, ED, energy level confidence. Yeah, that was his whole thing. That's exactly right, Jason. That was his cure. That was his freaking Viagra. Can you believe? Like, he's a demon. He's a freaking demon. That's like a definition of a demon. Yeah, he has venom in the blood, and the reason why is because the reason why is because of how he was raised. You know, his mom was a prostitute, and his father was a cop killer. His dad killed a cop because he said he wanted to do it. And then after killing a cop, he was in jail, and then he killed another cop while he was in jail, waiting for his death sentence. I mean, this is where this guy comes from. And I'm not saying that, like, if you come from places like that, that you can't do good, but you need to have the right nurturing to evolve into like a real life human, not a freaking demon. So yeah, he I mean, there's really nothing else to say about that. Let's see what else I put here. They got extradited. Okay, I'll read the epilogue and then we'll get going because it's getting a little late and I know you guys want to catch JD. All right. Gerald has been waiting over 5 years on death row for his sentence to be carried out. He has exhausted his first round of federal and state appeals and is starting over wherever his legal team can find a likely opening, no matter how remote. So remember yeah. So in September 1989, one of his final state appeals was rejected by the Nevada State Supreme Court because he ended up getting extradited to Nevada to actually be tried there as well. Gerald had gotten along fairly well on death row, except for a fight. No matter what direction the appeals process may turn, he will never set foot outside prison as a free man. Another death sentence awaits him in California. The Byrd Court was voted out of office in 1987. Another group of justices were voted in who have approved nearly 99% of all capital cases reviewed. It is if and when Gerald is finally executed by the people of Nevada, his death by lethal injection will be far less painful, far more dignified, and much faster than the sentences of death he carried out on his and Charlene's victims. Death by lethal injection means that a prisoner is strapped on a... Charlene is serving her 16 years, 8 months in the women's section of the Nevada prison a few miles out in the desert from where Gerald awaits on death row. Providing she isn't killed by another inmate or her legal team can't find a way to break the plea bargain, Charlene will probably be released in August of 97 at age 41. Okay, and then also she inherited her parents' money and property. So this is what I'm saying, man. Like, it's honestly not a really bright story, but there is a little bit of happiness because this motherfucker ended up getting ass cancer. So that's the only bit of bright spotlight I have in that story. But hopefully, if you didn't know about this couple, because we all hear about the Dahmers and all those, you know, the Night Stalker and Jack the Ripper, but I feel like not a lot of people know about Charlene and Gerald Gallagher. And especially, I don't think a lot of people know about this book because I don't see anybody talking about this book on YouTube. So I thought, you know, hopefully this video blows up, and because I'm like the only content creator who has talked about this book in particular, not the case, but this book. So please like and share the video. If you want to let me know how you think it was. If you liked the idea of this video, let me know in the comments. If you thought it was too much, like, you know, there's not a lot of happiness, yeah, just let me know. I'd love to hear what you guys think. So Jason says, yeah, this is news to me. I didn't know about these folks or this book. Yeah, you know, I was chatting with BLA a few months ago, and we were showing each other some of the things that we were looking at the time. And I showed him the book, and he was like, oh, who are these people? I've never heard of these people before. And, you know, it just surprised me because this was like my introduction into the whole serial killer thing. These were the first people that I knew about, like, as a kid. So for me, it's like, oh, I've always known about this. And I was so surprised that, BLA didn't know about it. Jason didn't know about it. So yeah, hopefully this will get more people to talk about this book. If you're interested in true crime novels and you can stand the graphic imagery, check it out. It's worth a read. It's really interesting, and it also gives you a really good idea of the criminal system at the time. It's also like an interesting portrait of crime in the late 70s. And yeah, Eric Van Hoffmann, Venom in the Blood. Very, very interesting. One of the first books that I picked up and read all the way through, like as a teenager reading adult novels. What am I reading now? Okay, so I just finished reading this book, American Psycho. My sister got this for me. Love you. Love my sister. Thank you so much. This was one of the best books I've ever read. And it's another really graphic one. So yeah, BLA's talked about this book. I'm not going to do a stream on it because everyone knows that BLA's the king. He knows all about Easton Ellis. But I took his recommendations and I read that book and I loved it. And so as soon as I was done, I immediately went and I picked up this. And I'm about, what page am I on? I'm just over 100 pages in, and I am enjoying the shards so much. It's so good so far. I love Bret Easton Ellis now. He has to be one of my favorite authors now, going along with Cormac and Kafka. They're probably, up there. Who else? Who else do I really like? Looking at, Joseph Conrad. I talked to Destro about this when we were in school. We got assigned that book, and at the time, you're a kid, you don't really understand a lot of the stuff. But I recently bought the book and reread it, and man, Heart of Darkness is an amazing book. You should definitely go out there and check that out. Joseph Conrad is a master. What else do I have to say? Excuse me. Yeah, I really enjoyed this stream. I enjoyed talking about this because I wanted to talk about this with people for a long time. And yeah, we're going to be back at it again next week. I'm not sure what we're going to be doing a stream on, but I will let you guys know on Instagram. Follow me on Instagram at darth.moda. And you can also check me out on Twitter at Moda Kyle. I might have to change that Twitter handle eventually. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. We're going to be taken out by, let's see who we got here. Let's some cool stuff. Out Destro, the mods, Jason, Mella, all the peers, all my peeps. You guys are amazing. Thank you for being here. I'll see you guys in JD's stream. All right, y'all. That was another good one. Can't wait to see you next time. Peace.